Here's a question, Daniel. Would you rather give up your double champ status or have Ryan Garcia as your roommate for the rest of your life?
Oh, I'm giving up double champ. I am not rooming with Ryan Garcia for the rest of my life. No way, no how. What's up, guys? Welcome to a brand new episode of Good Guy, Bad Guy. I'm Daniel Cormier. That's my man, Chael Sonnen. Chael P. So, for the record, you are not rooming with Ryan Garcia. You're not rooming with Ryan Garcia at all. You're rooming, or you're giving away all your accomplishments, right? Every championship, everything.
You got to give them all back. You got to give them all back before he shacks up in the room next door.
Yeah. I'm not staying with Ryan Garcia. They say you can work yourself into like real life. I feel like he worked himself into real life, but he got lucky and it worked out because he could have been the biggest clown on the planet. But the reality is it worked, but that was last week's news. Chael, Ryan Garcia beating Devin Haney was huge. But we got some big news in our world as the UFC has now announced that UFC 304 is going to be in Manchester, England. Look, I am a massive soccer fan, or football, as we call it in my community, right? I love watching the English Premier League. I love the Champions League, Chael. But for me, going to Manchester now is about going to watch two English champions defend their championships. As I believe, Chael, Tom Aspinall fights and Leon Edwards fights. What was the first thing that you thought whenever you heard that news?
Okay, and I like what you're saying. I also think that we're going to have both guys. Now, that isn't announced at this point. In fact, Dana White announced Manchester. He announced a date. He announced when tickets go on sale. He did not announce anybody on the card, which I got to tell you is absolutely incredible. I mean, I really do like when this happens because I enjoy speculation more than the reality. And let me tell you this. The reason that this is so important, okay, there is a belief in our sport that Tom Aspinall is not going to be able to cash in that golden ticket known as the interim championship to take on potentially Jon Jones in the future. I don't buy that. I don't buy that at all. I think you need to take a real good look at Aspinall, real good look at who the opponent is. And I do believe, because don't forget, an hour after Dana made the announcement of Manchester and the speculation of Aspinall started to come around, that he's going to be the first ever to defend an interim championship, 1 hour later, Jon Jones announces, I'm back. Jon Jones is in training camp. He took some pictures. He posted it on his Instagram. Daniel, there's such a thing as a coincidence, but this is a little bit too perfect. And when everybody's trying to say that match will never happen, I'm not in that category. I think it does happen. And I think this defense of Tom Aspinall and his potential opponent really matters.
It's not going to be Jon Jones. I hope you're not saying, are you trying to tell me right now that you believe that Tom Aspinall's opponent is Jon Jones, Chael Sonnen? Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't believe that. In fact, I think he's going to take on Curtis Blades. But what I'm saying is the idea that defending an interim championship doesn't matter and doesn't eventually play into Jon, I don't think is right. I think that Jon is attempting to build, that Jon is having his own fun, that Jon is laser focused on Stipe Miocic. I do not believe with any part of my being that Jon Jones leaves this sport without settling this piece of business that he currently has with Aspinall.
You know, Chael, I get it. I get what you're saying, but I think that Tom Aspinall, and this is for me, right? There are some guys, right? Curtis Blades just had that great fight against Jailton Almeida. He won. So obviously he is a contender. Him and Tom have the history of the injury. The only fight that Tom Aspinall has lost belongs to Curtis Blades. But let me give you this one. If I think Tom Aspinall's opponent, how about Cyril Gane, right? Think about when Cyril Gane was the man. When Cyril Gane was fighting for the championship, the interim champion, Tom Aspinall went to Paris, France. The first time we ever held an event there. Raucous crowd, going crazy. Cyril fights a masterful fight against Tai Tuivasa. Tom Aspinall's in the crowd waiting for his moment. Chael, we've now seen this 2 times. We saw Sean O'Malley do it to Merab Dvalishvili in Miami. It did not make him get the fight. Even though Sean tried to kind of not no-sell him, he still ultimately is getting the fight. Tom Aspinall is waiting, Chael, for his moment. Cyril Gane no-sells him. Doesn't let him in the octagon. Goes and says he's beyond Tom Aspinall. He's too big to fight Tom Aspinall. Tom Aspinall becomes the champ, Chael, says the same thing to Cyril Gahn. So now Cyril Gahn is the guy that wants to fight. Tom saying to him, no, 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 no. Remember what happened in Paris. That is the type of stuff, Chael. That's enough for me. Like, that's enough for me to go, I got to see these two petty dudes fight because they're both so petty that when they got the power, it's like the dude that owns a football in the neighborhood, Chael. And when he doesn't get picked first, he grabs his football in his kicking tee and he goes home. That's why I want the fight, because they're both petty and they both deserve each other because they both roll around in the mud and they both messy.
Yeah, and Dan, I love the way you laid that out because I have the same interpretation as you. I think that Aspinall got his feelings hurt. Aspinall wanted something from Ciryl, and when Ciryl had the opportunity to give it to him, which only meant to acknowledge his presence, that's all he had to do. Tom laid out the plan, he laid out the blueprint, he flew to a different country, he did the whole bit. All he needed was acknowledged, and Ciryl didn't give him as much as that. All of a sudden, a couple months later, outside of Madison Square Garden, Tom has a belt, and now Ciryl needs him. I like the pettiness, where Tom all of a sudden says, I'm not going to fight with you. Daniel, I believe that the problem is if you do bring Ciryl back, if he wins, you put a belt around Ciryl. If Jon Jones is agreeable, you're going to do a rematch with Jon Jones and Ciryl. I think that's too tough. After the performance that Ciryl gave or did not give, I just don't think there's any scenario where they redo that match, and you would run into a big risk if you put the belt around him.
Well, the problem with this is Jon said he's fighting Stipe and he starts talking about retirement. So in reality, if he is to be taken at his word, Chael, it doesn't matter who fights for the belt, right? Because he's not going to be there to fight the next guy. The most that we got from Jones in regards to him potentially fighting Tom Aspinall was when Tom walked up to him at that event, kind of grabbed him by the arm. Jon was like, keep doing your work and then we'll see what happens down the line. But there is no clear indicator that Jon is going to stick around and fight these young guys. I would love to see it. I would love to see him in there with Aspinall. I would love to see him in there with guys like, not Cyril Gahn, because we know how that played out, but guys like Curtis Blades and guys like Jailton Almeida, guys that have the ability to try and push him. Because here's the deal, Chael. You and I could probably agree on this, right? In Jon Jones' prime, Tom Aspinall, Jailton Almeida, Curtis Blades, Cyril Gahn, all these guys, it would almost be laughable, the thought that they could compete against him, right? But it doesn't seem like he's in his prime anymore. So I would like to see him compete against those young guys as he starts to kind of filter out of his prime, to see if they can compete with him. Because as he has taken a step, these guys are phenomenal. So I believe that him sticking around would be good. But first, Aspinall has to defend the interim championship. Like you said, we very rarely get that. But what you got to imagine, though, is Leon Edwards will be on the card, too. And Leon Edwards is not an interim champion. He's the undisputed welterweight champion of the world. It's going to be Bilal Muhammad. These guys have fought once. It was a no contest because of an eye poke. What do you make of that fight? And is there a better option? Because there's always been these talks, like people tend to want to push Bilal Muhammad off and not give him what he has earned. But is there a better option at welterweight for Leon Edwards?
No, there's not. If Leon's going to defend the championship, it's got to be against Bilal, as long as there's no illness and or injury between the two of them. I checked with both camps as early as yesterday. They both said they're fine. However, they don't have this deal done. They are rumored. They believe it's in the talks, but I'm just sharing with you, like, that thing is still dangling. And I got to just back up a one step to Tom Aspinall. If you put Tom Aspinall against Ciryl Gahn, and Ciryl Gahn gets the jump on him, make no mistake, you just retired Jon Jones. In that very moment, if Tom Aspinall goes down, Jon Jones does not return beyond Stipe. And I just really want to make that point to you. It's fairly important, in my opinion, that he is in there opposite Curtis Blades. And there's a lot of politics. There's a lot of things that go behind that. They have unfinished business. Curtis Blades is the only name that Aspinall has said. And Aspinall did say, you beat me and I want to fix this one, regardless if it was by injury or not. I want you to really understand the problem if you put Ciryl in there and Ciryl has success.
But even if those guys did good business, Chael, they did big business. Jones and Surreal did big business. Could they do big business again? Or because of the way it played out, you don't think anybody would really tune into it again?
No, I certainly do. Listen, if it's a cash grab and that's really what motivates Jon, yeah, of course, I would too. Your job as the champion is to take the biggest paycheck against the easiest opponent. I'm not saying that Jon would have a problem with that. I take Jon at his word that he's fighting for legacy. I take Jon at his word that he thinks he's got one guy still left that could raise a question, which is Stipe Miocic. As soon as that's done, there's going to be another question looming that it was unforeseen, and that is this young man out of England called Tom Aspinall. If you bring Aspinall down, though, that conversation is done. You put Surreal back on top. Jon's already faced him. He goes out on top.
You know, it's very interesting in regards to this fight. I love Leon Edwards in England, Chael. The last time he walked out in London, crazy the reception he got. Because if anybody deserves to be treated like a star, it's Leon Edwards, because his road to becoming the champ was not easy. He had to win 10 fights. He had to go undefeated in 11 fights before he finally got an opportunity. And then he had to get beat on by Kamaru Usman for 24 minutes. No. He won the first round. Then for about 17 minutes, he got beat on by Kamaru Usman, landed that knockout in Utah, went back to England to defend the championship in more dominant fashion. But the reception he got when he walked out to that octagon, crazy. Because the first time he fought in London, Chael, he got booed. And they cheered for Gunnar Nelson because Gunnar Nelson was more known than Leon Rocky Edwards at the time. So if there's a guy that deserves to be playing in front of a crowd that loves him, it's Leon Rocky Edwards. Now, one of the things that always plays a part in these fights when we do international fights is, when will the fight happen? In Abu Dhabi, they ensure that on pay-per-view, they get the fight in prime time in Abu Dhabi. So then we are given a midday fight in the United States. In England, though, they're making it prime time in the United States, Chael. 3 a.m. is when these guys will be fighting. Have you ever had an experience where you're fighting in the middle of the night? Because I know as a broadcaster, what I have to do to try to flip the clock when I get in these places whenever we have those fight cards that are going to be in the middle of the night. Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, Daniel, only one time. When I fought Jon Jones, I left the locker room at a midnight. The pay-per-view window was open until 1 a.m. Now, I happen to be a night owl. I liked it. In fact, when I was training, I used to do my second workout about 11 p.m. It was a run and a lift. It was something that I could do on my own without a coach or teammates, but that's when I felt my best. Let me tell you a quick story, though. When I did the Ultimate Fighter 3 in Brazil, opposite Vanderlei Silva, and don't forget, MMA is the #2 sport in the entire country of Brazil, only behind soccer. So the amount of fans that they have is so massive. Daniel, they would do these things and it would end about 2 or 3 in the morning. You could not get anywhere on the freeways and the roads in Brazil because so many people were returning home from the parties that they had watching these fights. So it kind of does matter where you go. And when you bring up Manchester, Manchester is the rave capital of the world. It's not like these guys are going to have to set their alarm to get up. They're already up.
Chael, I remember once I fought, listen to this name, you might know it. I fought a guy named Soa Palele in like my 3rd professional fight. I went to Australia. I went there 2 days earlier, middle of the night, we're fighting. I'm yawning, Chael. I'm falling asleep on the table. Bob Cook walks up to me with a cup of coffee and goes, "You better drink this coffee because you're going into that fight." And I remember taking a little sip of the coffee, but the moment I started to get closer to the actual competition, something woke up in me. I didn't need the coffee. There was a natural boost of energy because they say when we're in extreme situations, Chael, we have something that kind of awakens, right? When people are faced with impossible odds, they tend to find ways to overcome. And I think that's what happened to me. I think that's what's going to happen to these fighters. But as a broadcaster, I'm usually trying to flip the clock in Abu Dhabi because they're saying, hey, you're calling the fights at 7 p.m. our time, which means it's middle of the night in the country. So what do I start doing? Chael, you know what I do, Chael? I take sleeping pills in the morning and I stay up all night. I don't even go to bed. I'm like a night owl in Abu Dhabi. So I'm staying on American time because I know that I need to treat this as if I live here. So you got to acclimate to the place that you're in. I think it will be a factor. I think it'll be a bigger factor for the guys that go later. Those athletes that go on Tuesday, a fight week like normal, you got to go early. You got to go for 2 weeks. That is what we always did in wrestling, and that is what I always did in fighting when I fought in a different time zone. 2 weeks is what you're going to need to try to acclimate if you want to treat this fight as if it's happening at a normal hour.
Yep. Yeah, Daniel, I've heard it. I mean, I really can't personalize it at all. I had coaches in college where if the national tournament was going to be in the East Coast, we lived in the West Coast. I went to the University of Oregon, where we would train at different times to try to simulate the session. I really didn't get it, man. I thought it was overkill, but that's personal. I have seen it work with other guys. For example, Fabricio Verdum versus Cain Velasquez in Mexico City. That might be one of the great examples. Verdum went out there 30 days early. He acclimated. Now, that wasn't to a time change. That was to elevation, but the principles and the point is the same. I think that might have cost Cain a world championship, and I just offer that as an example of something that you would remember, something that the fans could relate to. You know, the time does matter if you're used to doing something. My body, I got to tell you, man, I really don't get it. My body, whatever time the clock says, that's what time it is. If I get somewhere and the clock says it's 10 p.m., it's 10 p.m. But I know a lot of other people, it really affects them.
You're lucky. You're very lucky then. You're very lucky if that's the thing. You're very lucky if that's the thing, because that don't work like that for everybody. But yeah, Kane's situation was very bad. I couldn't even spar with him when I showed up 3 days before the fight. I was so exhausted because of the altitude. Now, Chael, Sean O'Malley is a big name in mixed martial arts. Him and Ryan Garcia, who we spoke about earlier in the show now, are talking about a boxing match. That's exciting. How excited are you, Chael? Or does it even interest you, the idea of Sean O'Malley going over to fight Ryan Garcia? Is Ryan Garcia that valuable an asset now because he won the fight over Devin Haney?
I would have to ask people why they find that interesting. And I know that there's an answer. I don't want to tell somebody they shouldn't like something, but it is a little bit confusing. If I was to go back to 1993, when they first set that octagon up in Mobile, Alabama, people were absolutely captivated by the idea of having such a open format to do combat. And now those same exact people want to go back to all the arguments that we made and successfully made over 30 years, take all the opportunity and skills away, and just have pugilism. And it's just one of those interesting things for me. We never see these crossovers. The only time this has ever happened is Mayweather versus McGregor. And I have personally never lived through anything that was where the truth was mistold more than that fight. Those guys did not make the money they pretend to. It did not do the pay-per-views they pretend to. They begged to do a rematch, and the benefactor writing the check absolutely was not going to do it again. And I only tell you that it's not like this is a great idea. We tried to do it with Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou. It bombed. Everybody got crushed on it. I don't know why we keep going back to this concept. If Garcia and O'Malley want to fight, I would watch it for sure. But what would they be fighting for? What title would they be fighting for? What weight class is it? Is that even interesting? I don't know, man. I like what O'Malley does. I want to see O'Malley versus Nurmagomedov after he gets done with Merab. Just by example, I like O'Malley calling out guys in different weight classes, maybe, going up to 45 and starting to talk about these conversations. For Ryan Garcia, and I don't really get it.
I can just listen to you go on, and I love it. I love, because I see you processing through, like, I don't understand. You're trying to make it make sense to you, but you can't. It's like you're trying your damnedest to make this make sense to me, but it doesn't. Like, here's the deal. I like that Sean O'Malley said 2 sick performances before, because now it seems as though O'Malley finally, Chael, is taking note of what he should do. He initially said, I want to fight Ilia Topuria right now. Fans gave him a ton of backlash. He said, okay, I thought that's what you wanted, but sure, I'll fight my weight class. Now he's saying, maybe a boxing match is out there for me. But to make sure he doesn't get the vitriol that he got last time, he goes, after I fight 2 more times and defend my championship. So I think that he has now at least taken note of the environment surrounding him, and he's not just saying things, not believing that he will catch flack. Ryan Garcia, Sean O'Malley is fun as an idea. My thing is this, though. Is there really that much money in boxing where Sean O'Malley will leave his championship reign to go fight against Ryan Garcia. These are 140-pound fighters. These guys are not the names from the past that fought in those middleweights that were making millions and millions of dollars. What is the licensing fee going to be? What do they share whenever it's done? My biggest issue with this, though, is that it's always the MMA guy having to go to boxing. But we put boxing on this pedestal as if you're guaranteed to make all this money, and I just don't know if these guys are making the amounts that they think they're going to make when they get out there. Sure, I think Francis got a lot of money when he fought Tyson Fury. I don't believe that the ticket sales probably matched the money that him and Tyson Fury made, that the pay-per-views matched it. But they went and did it over in Abu Dhabi. They did it in Saudi Arabia, where the money is vast, if I could say it in that way. So yes, there are instances where it works like that. I just don't know if it will be much more value than Sean O'Malley fighting someone in the mixed martial arts cage, Chael.
Yeah, I don't really understand it either. I mean, listen, I have a big problem with the claim that Francis Ngannou made a whole bunch of money. If you're given money, that is very different than making money, right? If you're given a percentage and it's prosperous and it's something that could be repeated and sustainable, that's very different than charity where somebody gives you money, not for nothing. Now, secondly, and promoters always miss this. It's one of the many reasons that promoters have a very hard time jumping into space and competing against Dana White. What are you fighting for? Now, if you want to go back in history, there used to be very important reasons that somebody within your tribe and or village was good at fighting because somebody from a different tribe and or village came over. They could take your life and your land. It was a very big deal. Now, as the world became more civilized, eventually a promoter wanted to turn this into a sport, and he created something known as a belt. He threw a belt out and got guys like you and me to suspend and sacrifice their entire life to try to have that darn belt. The point that I'm trying to make, when you have big fights, you have a big disparaging gap in winner versus loser. What is at stake is the question. So nothing is at stake if O'Malley goes to take on Garcia. Regardless of the outcome, nothing was at stake. There's no title. There's no reign. There's no personal grudge. There's no feud. There's no undefeated record. The MMA guy goes back to MMA. The boxing guy goes on with boxing. Nothing is at stake. And if somebody doesn't have something to lose, you can't have a big fight.
You know what the bigger issue for me is this: if Sean O'Malley wins, then he doesn't want to go back to MMA. Look at what's happening with Francis. That's the bigger issue for me, right? If it does work and he goes off and he fights boxing and he makes all this money, Chael, they don't want to come back. I bet right now Francis Ngannou, after making what he made to fight Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, will have a very difficult time going back to the PFL and making $5-7 million. It's just the truth. So, sure, these ideas are fun if we want to run the risk, Chael, of losing these guys for a really long time or getting them back, Chael, damaged. Because right now, I love Francis. But that Tyson Fury fight elevated him. But then in the way that he lost the last fight, it damages him a little bit, right? Because it made him seem like an amateur taking on a professional boxer. So there's some risk in that. And I don't know that I love it so much. But yeah, Manchester's going to be sick. 2 title fights, I would imagine, are going to be on the card. And Sean O'Malley versus Ryan Garcia as an idea is fun. I don't know if the risk is worth the reward to me. So I think I'm tapping out on it. All right, Chael, while I may be out on that fight, what I'm into is what we got next. Air, what we're doing.
All right, guys, the NFL Draft kicks off tonight on ESPN. That's why we're holding our very own Good Guy versus Bad Guy Ultimate Fighting Draft. You two will take turns drafting 4 current or former fighters to join you in the ultimate battle against one another. Since DC has more losses on his record because, well, Chael is undefeated and undisputed, DC, you get the first pick.
Oh, my goodness. You're right. I mean, it would seem like the guy that has all the wins should pick second. All right. For me, I got my first pick, and my first pick is Jon Jones. I didn't want to do it. I got to take Jon Jones. I mean, Chael, I got to take Jon Jones, Chael. I just have to do it for all the reasons I've said on a number of occasions. If I'm taking a guy that can sell pay-per-views and can fight, I'm taking Jon Jones because I'm not doing just business today, Chael. I'm getting the guy that I know will win at the top of his division. So, Chael, with my first pick, I'm taking Jon Jones. With all the distractions and all the issues, I'm taking Jones.
All right, and I got to tell you, obviously, I would clone myself and then fight myself 5 different times, but since that's not the way the draft works, I'm going with DL Tank Abbott, the first MMA fighter that I ever met in person, the first MMA fighter that I ever got to train with. This was out on the campus of Brigham Young University where I was a freshman. Mark Schultz was the head coach, and Tank Abbott came out because he was getting ready for something called the Ultimate, where he believed in the semifinals he was likely to draw wrestler Dan Severn. I'm taking Tank Abbott as my first pick.
Wow, pretty good pick, Chael. All right, round number 2. With my first pick in the second round, Chael, I am going to take the one and only George Rush St. Pierre. Because, hey, if we're talking fighting, not many people did fighting better than George St. Pierre, Chael. So I'm taking a guy that not only became the champion, but won the championship and defended it multiple times. And then on the way out, Chael, as a final kiss, hey, Chael, you know how they do. Politicians on their way out, they give a couple kisses. As a final kiss, he went up a weight class and became the middleweight champion of the world. So if we're talking fighting, George Rush St. Pierre has got to be on your list. So my second pick is George St. Pierre.
George St. Pierre is the greatest to have ever done it at an agreed-upon weight class, at an agreed-upon date, and at an agreed-upon time. I'm going to take a guy that will do it with no agreements needed, Michael Bisping. I'm not a bar guy. I'm not like a club guy. Oosh, oosh, oosh. We don't really even have those in Oregon. I happen to find myself in California with the lovely Miss Brittany. We're out there in a club. I see Michael Bisping at the bar ordering some drink. He wanted 4 of them, and I don't even know what they were called, but the bartender refused to give them. Michael Bisping told the bartender a word. That's all he said. He said a word while pointing outside. The 2 of them walked outside as I observed the entire thing. They came back in less than 10 seconds. Michael had that order filled, and the bartender refused to take his money. I don't know what happened, but I'm taking Michael Bisping.
Okay, Chael, as we get into round number 3, because that's how this works, right? I'll walk up to the thing. I'll be with the commissioner as I get ready to pick my third pick. Here's what we got, Chael, as we get into round 3. You start to look around the board, and it's still super elite prospects. I'm going to give you a little bit of recency bias. I have to, because we're talking about fighting, right? The Ultimate Fighting Championships. I saw a guy a couple weeks ago that showed you what fighting is. I'm going with the BMF champion. The Blessed Express, choo-choo, has now left the station. And with my third pick, I am taking Max Blessed Holloway. Chael, you wanted to, hey, you know what's crazy? When I was watching that fight with Justin Gaethje, I popped like everybody else when he said, right here, right now. But this is not a one-time thing. He's done this multiple times. He did it against Dustin Poirier. He did it against Justin Gaethje. He did it against Ricardo Lamas. He just does it. He loves fighting. And why wouldn't you love fighting? If you've got the head the size of a freaking watermelon and you can't get dropped. I'm taking Max Holloway with my third pick, man. I'm building a great team, Uncle Chael. You better pick it up.
Hey, Max Holloway's great, but I think that size matters. I'm going to go with my favorite fighter, one of the ones that inspired me the most, the king of the streets, Marco Ruas. And Marco Ruas is the one that showed us all that you could have skills standing and skills on the ground. That was almost a forbidden fruit at one point in time. If you were a karate guy and tried to go into a jiu-jitsu school, by example, there was a period of time in the 90s where you had to have a note. You had to provide from one sensei to the other that you had permission to go and cross-train. Marco Ruas broke that rule much like Bruce Lee did. He innovated the sport, in my opinion. The ultimate fight that I ever wanted to see that I never got was Marco Ruas versus Don Fry. Ultimately, I am going with Marco Ruas.
Great pick, Chael. That's a great pick. Now my fourth pick is a bit of an odd one, right? Because it's a 2-part pick, right? And that's just kind of how it works, right? All right. First, I'm going to take the last emperor, Fedor Emelianenko, because you're right. Heavyweights do matter. And what he did during his time, especially in Pride, was second to none. But I'm going to hedge that, Chael, and I want to look at you as I tell you. Chael, I am taking Fedor Emelianenko as the leader of my last pick of the entire roster of Pride, including Vanderlei Silva, Quentin Rampage Jackson, Shogun Hua, Ricardo Arona, Kevin Randleman, Mark Coleman. I am taking the entire Pride roster from back in the day as they got thrown into the deal. I traded up in the draft, ended up taking Fedor, and they put the entire Pride roster with him. So that's what I'm doing at pick number 4, Chael. What do you think of that pick?
I like it a lot. I am going to see your number 4, and I'm going to raise you a Royce Gracie. And I will tell you, today's guys, you might be noticing a theme that I'm going back to yesterday, but Daniel, the way I interpreted the question, it said fighters. I don't know really more of a group of prima donnas and fake tough guys than today's fighters. I mean, you miss weight by 2 pounds, all of a sudden your opponent doesn't want to do the fight. I see guys pulling out a fight a month early. They tell you, I'm not going to feel good a month from now. There's not even a doctor with a crystal ball that could tell you how you're going to feel a month from now. Royce Gracie, meanwhile, got up and he walked outside 4 different times against 4 different guys, and there was no weigh-ins needed. He didn't even know who the opponent was until the other matches would play out because they had a straight line bracket. I am taking Royce Gracie.
That is a pretty good team, Chael. It's a bit of a yesteryear type of team, you know, with Marco Ruas and Royce Gracie and Tank Abbott. But look at DC's ultimate team. I mean, Jon Jones, George St. Pierre, Max Holloway, and the entire Pride roster. Chill. Tell me that's not a team. Just be honest. Tell me that's not a team.
Oh, that team is nasty. I mean, I even have a feeling I know who your 5th pick is going to be. You got a great team there, but you do got a team of sportsmen. I got a team of fighters.
Yeah, it's a great group of fighters, and I love Pride. And pride never dies. You know how they used to say that all the time, right? Pride never dies. So pride never dies. And chill. History is always present. And on this day in MMA history, a certain bad guy walked to the octagon at UFC 159 to take on Jon Jones. Chill, what do you remember about that night? And like you said, right, you would have took that belt if the referee would have saw that broken toe, huh?
Daniel, I got to tell you, and maybe I didn't get an A in math class, but I think that we're both 1 pick short on our draft. I'm happy to move on, though. Let's talk a little bit of Jon Jones. What I remember about that night, I thought I could beat him. I had gone through the Ultimate Fighter with him, and most athletes that are really good are not really tough, and most athletes that are really tough aren't really good. You could win an Olympic gold medal or a UFC championship just being better than everybody or tougher. When I had done the Ultimate Fighter with Jon Jones, I trained twice a day, every day, till I was dripping wet and sweating, absolutely exhausted. He never broke a sweat a single time, and I thought I could outwork him. We locked up at the beginning of the fight. And you got to understand, for this fight, it was my first time at 205 pounds. I had a higher juice concentrate than Tropicana. Okay, he pushed me across that octagon like a Volvo into a Mack truck, and I started looking for a way out. That's just the truth. That was like being locked in a cage with a bear. I'm glad it's over. That's the only fight I have ever lost, or competition I have ever lost, where I did not want a rematch. I did not need a rematch. We're good. You have proved your point, young man. Enjoy your run.
It's always funny, too, because I think that's one of the things about Jones. You don't realize how tough he is, right? You put him in some tough spots, and he always seems to rise to the occasion. That's the one thing I took from our experiences. Like, I put him in some tough spots, and he never wavered. He just kept fighting. Now, Chael, last week we said we would take fan questions, so Air has a fan question for us. Air, what's up?
All right, this question is from Christian23903. In 10 years, what 2 active fighters at the championship level like y'all could you see hosting an MMA show together on ESPN similar to Good Guy, Bad Guy? Chael?
I'm going to go with Belal Muhammad, and he's going to be joined with none other than Sean O'Malley. And my biggest reason, Daniel, is they're already getting their feet wet. These guys are understanding in the entertainment era. They're understanding the importance. They're understanding that from a monetized standpoint, they're going to be called to work 3 times a year. And the only thing they can monetize is their performance. That's the only commodity that they have. But they are extending that. They're breaking those rules. They're getting out. They're branching out. They're bringing in their own audience. They're embracing social media. I think those things are very smart. And I frankly think both of them are very good at it.
I think it'll be a different pair, right? Kamaru Usman is finally starting to understand the game, right? He started a podcast with Henry Cejudo. They do a phenomenal job on their podcast. And I think I think we're going to see Sean O'Malley and Kamaru Usman hosting the show together. I think that is going to be good because you're going to have two. Yes, you'd watch it because it's two varying opinions, two different type of personalities, and two guys that's on the absolute top of the sport. So I think you're going to get Sugar and Usman as an ESPN show down the line in 10 years, as Kamaru Usman will probably host the show with Sugar Sean O'Malley. That was a good fan question. But guys, anytime, ask us anything. Just jump in the comments, send it to Chael and I, and we will answer these questions on the show. Find the show every Monday and Thursday, ESPN MMA YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. We're also on ESPN2 at midnight Eastern on Mondays, and it usually just is on at times in the week. So look for your boys on actual television. For Chael Sonnen, I'm Daniel Cormier. Until next time, guys, peace.